suitable to hear, listen?
Yes, sir. Yes, Dr. Sapna, you may proceed.
Hello everybody, myself Sapna Chinurkar. Today all we gathered here for the 7th lecture of a special lecture series. I heartily welcome to our honorable chief guest as well as we welcome to everyone here. I feel privileged and extremely proud to have this opportunity to address our chief guest, Dr. Girish Kumar Jani. He has completed his master degree in Vedant, Sahityacharya, and also he has completed his doctorate. He is giving his valuable service since from June 1989. Right now, he is working as director in Sanskrit Studies and Research, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Mumbai. He has held a number of honorable positions such as Examination Secretary, Bhavan Sanskrit Exam Department, Joint Editor, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan's Research Journal, Joint Co-Editor, Samvida Bhavan Sanskrit Journal, Member of Managing Committee, Bhavan's Jyotisha Bharati, Member of Managing Committee, Bharatiya Mumba Devi Adarsha Sanskrit Mahavidyalaya, Member of Managing Committee, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan Jamnagar Kendra, former member of Syndicate and Senate, Sardar Patel University Vallabh Vidyanagar in Gujarat. He also edited some valuable books, edited Jaya Gomez by Bal Patil, published by Hindi Grantha Karyalay Mumbai in 2006, edited Pandit Suna Bhatta's Sanskrit commentary on the Saundarya Lahari of Adi Shankaracharya, published by B.V. Bhavan in 2016, edited Shri Guru Charitamrut by late Shri Ananta Gopal Deshpande, co-edited several Sanskrit works published by Mota Mandir, Mumbai. He has also participated a number of national and international conferences. He has also delivered talks and lectures on Sanskrit and allied subjects at many institutes. It's our great pleasure to have such a great personality with us. And lastly, I would like to request respected Dr. Girish Kumar Jani sir to deliver a lecture on literary research in Sanskrit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. I very heartily thank Professor Dr. Shakuntala Gavdeji, head of the Department of Sanskrit, University of Mumbai, for inviting me to speak on literary approach of research in Sanskrit today. I convey my regards to Professor Madhavi Narsalaji, Professor Dr. Suchitra Tajaneji, Professor Radhika Deshpandeji, and other professors at the department, and I heartily welcome all the students. The subject is literary approach of research in Sanskrit. Now, first of all, we have to understand what do we call literary composition. Anything which is conveying from the part of composer through the medium of composition to the destination, the readers or connoisseurs, which is having the values, the components, and the forms. That is the literary composition. Not only in Sahitya. We speak about Sahitya when we remember the word that Sahitayoho, Shabdarthayoho, Bhavaha, Sahitya. Athava Samanam Hitam Yayoho, Kritikrit Kritik Pathakayoho, Va. Sahitihi and Vaggeya Karatva is also used, the word in South India. We are now talking about literary tradition. In India, we have a very rich heritage down to the ages from Vedic period. We do have foundations of our literary expressions in Veda itself. Pashya devasya kavyam na mamara na jiriyati. The whole world has been referred to as devasya kavyam. It is a poetical composition expressed in a beautiful way. Our pursuit for bliss and beauty is conveyed through this medium. When we want to express something uniquely for joy, for bliss, for expression, for manifestation, we take resort to this type of unique expressions. We use the word alankara, and all people who have worked in this field are called alankarikas. Alam paryaptam karoti, which is making fuller. A sense of fullness is being brought together, through which the means are called alankaras. So previously in ancient days, alankara itself was a synonym of kavya. Alankara, kavya. We had at least three traditions of literary phase. One was coming from intuition, which was not giving any weightage to other things which came later on. A flash of imagination, one inspiration, one divine message, and it was perceived by the person whom we call Rishi. The divine connection of the poet is regarded very highly in our tradition. I don't know, I got it. And this is the thing from which the modern thought has taken a new path. Rigorous training, strenuous efforts, and good amount of reading, contemplating, discussion, observation, thought process, evaluation, assessment, all things come together, and we come to know that one school developed called Kavi Shiksha. A tradition took rise of teaching the people to be poets. Now, can poetry be taught? We have to say yes, and we have to say no. Genesis, the origin from which the poetry outpours. Then comes the format in which those ideas will have to be expressed, the form. Then we'll have to think about the meaning. Sistruksha, the urge to produce something, to create something, to manifest something, makes the poet and another Prajapati. He is the creator in his own world. That's what we think. Apare khalu sansare kavire Prajapati. He is creating the world in the manner in which it befits, he thinks it is befitting to his temperament, to his expression, to his objective, to his aim and goal. Now here we have to think twice. It is very difficult to speak about the sistruksha of poetic genius. Nirankushaha kavayaha. It's very difficult. You cannot carve any path which is compulsory for all. Every time, every sarjak, every creator, every composer needs to present something which has not been said earlier. This is seen everywhere, whenever any rhetorician, any master, any composer, any poet, any playwright is attempting to say something. It means, first of all, he is thinking about some uncommon, novelty. The novelty too has two facets. One, novelty in expression altogether for the first time, or novelty of the things which were unknown to us and brought by the poet or composer to the platform. In both the cases, the word navatva is used. And it is also coming from the verb provoking. We are directing, we are inspiring. So poet is almost used in the sense of God in Upanishad. Kavihi, Manishi, Parivuh, Swayambhu. We see that there are seers, the rishis, the sages who could see the truth. Second point for creation of any literary piece is searching for his own identity. Poet is searching himself or herself through the creation, through the manifestation of his ideas, his beliefs, his stock of knowledge and information and skills. All these things are employed in his kruti. The word kruti is also worth noticing in that sense particularly. We are demarcating the things on the table from the rest of the things. So it is becoming an akruti. It is in that sense particular kruti is a piece of writing is regarded. When we speak about vak, when we speak about bhasha, when we speak about vangmaya, we have to think that the apparatus, the format, and the formula are universal. But the voice, the sound, the shabda itself is coming from within. And that's why it is very difficult to make any generalized line for defining poetry. It has, it is, and it will flow continuously. It has flown like that only. Just as language flows incessantly and grammar follows it, such is the case with poetic creations and rhetoricians. Kavya Shastra will always follow and frame the forms, and will try again and again to do so. Now, first of all, I would like to thank Bharati Vidya Bhavan and University of Mumbai both for teaching me in this particular discipline with such great dedication. The teachers taught us to understand what does it mean by the word Shabda. Shabda is nothing but sound, and through sound, some meaning is attached with it. And that meaning is also conveyed by the word Shabda. That's why the word Shabda has come with the meaning of word. So word is a secondary meaning. Sound is the first meaning. We are addressing ourselves through the medium of our voice. The generalization and unification of our cordial dialogue with each and everyone, sometimes even with our own self, is conveyed this literary composition style. It is not out of the place that I begin my presentation with a long quote from a book which inspired me a lot as far as the subject of modern Sanskrit literature is considered. Sanskrit Vangmay Ka Brihat Itihas, 7th part, called Adhunik Sanskrit Sahitya Ka Itihas. General Editor Baldev Upadhyay and editor of the volume Jagannath Pathak, published by Uttar Pradesh Sanskrit Sansthan, Lucknow. I was very happy to go through these lines of Pandit Jagannath Pathak, who gave the voice to my mental tension that what should I speak? Because the tradition in which we are calling the word research as research is not very popular or not very near to this tradition of our Oriental creativity. We have heard the words that ekaha shlokaha pi prabandhayate, something like that, or that particular poetry is good or adam, or praises of great masters like Kavi Guru Kalidas, or Naishadam Vidodaushadam, etc., etc., etc. But as far as the discipline of research is considered, it is clearly coming from the outside. And here we are venturing in that particular format, that how should we try to understand the psyche, the mind, the ideas and ideology of the creator in context of connoisseur, reader, society, surrounding, and ultimate goal of eternality in the sense of humanity. I read, quote, पंडित जगन्नाथ पाठक says, आधुनिक काल के साहित्य में भी मुझे यह जानकर प्रसन्नता हुई कि रचनाकारों ने भारतीय संस्कृति के प्रति अपने अपने ढंग से निष्ठा और आदर व्यक्त किया है। भरत, भामह, आनंदवर्धन आदि प्राचीन आचार्यों के सिद्धांतों को बहुत कुछ मान्यता प्रदान की है। This passage is worth reading with great patience. Pandit Jagannath Pathak is referring to the modern poets, and he is expressing that these modern poets have given approval to Bharat, Bhama, and Anandvardhan. This passage, it's its own kind, having a different meaning, reading between the lines. These modern Sanskrit poets and composers have given approvals, more or less, to the tradition of Bharat, Bhama, Anandvardhan, and others. I continue his quotation. इसके साथ ही इन्होंने आधुनिक साहित्य की समीक्षा में आने वाले तत्वों पर भी ध्यान दिया है. The word "be" is operative here, to be marked with great patience. समीक्षा में आने वाले तत्वों पर भी ध्यान दिया है. आज जो काव्य समीक्षा के विशेष तत्व विचार कोटि में आता है, वह मेरे विचार में परिवेश है. The surrounding in which we are living. This is becoming the primal focus. रचनाकार का अपना परिवेश निश्चित रूप से उसकी रचना के अस्तित्व में आने का कारण बनता है. The greater gamut about which the editor of this book is indicating is surrounding includes everything: the media, the way, the teaching, the learning, the skill, the education at large, and to whom the thing is to be catered. रचनाकार का अपना परिवेश निश्चित रूप से उसकी रचना के अस्तित्व में आने का कारण बनता है. Now the very important line, प्राचीन काल में इस पर विचार नहीं किया गया है. This every student of research in Sanskrit should pay attention to this thing, that modern style of research in Sanskrit or Indology is a different, altogether different thing from the past. We had great masters, we had evolution of the works, we had great thought on the tradition and sects of beliefs. But individually, if you are focusing completely on the evolution and essence of one particular composition, it was not there. Either the commentators elucidated the meaning of the composition taken on hand, or they were making it more interesting, or through them, their comments, they were catering some new ideas adjacent to that, or rather they were opposing, as Rajanak Ruyak opposed Mahima Bhatta. We'll have to consider these things altogether, that when we are speaking about an approach to research in Sanskrit, it's completely a new age, and our beginning has commenced now. How we shall be able to understand the psyche of the poet? How should we make demarcation between his own personal ideas and his compositions? I remember, and I will not resist myself from quoting, Dhor Gavar Shudra Pashunari Sab Taran ke Adhikari. It is put in the mouth of Tulsidas now and again since long period. Of course, it is line coming from the mouth of Samudra, who was not giving way to Rama to go to Lanka. Angry Rama decided to invade Samudra, humble down it. Then he requested, we all are such, we deserve punishment. Now here, the thing is that there are two things. One is poet, one is his creation. So should we make it a clear-cut distinction between them? Or should we try to find out his own ideas in his creation? These two ways are very important to be pondered over, because we have erred at many times in this particular field. Second thing, sometimes we are fascinated by the glow of the language, by the scholastic presentation of the matter. But for what the creation has been presented before us is an altogether different thing. Years before, when I was learning at my Guruji at Pathshala of Bharati Vidya Bhavan, one senior student came who had learnt Mritchakatikam years before, say about 20 years back. And I was fortunate to be in the class at that time. Our Guruji, Pandit Ramashakar Tripathi asked his past student, what do you remember about Vasanta Sena? What do you remember about that particular play? And the student who has left this line altogether, academic line, he just uttered the words, Guruji, I don't remember anything else than pure love of one high class born gentleman with a courtesy, and self-accepting of poverty for this cause. Now, for these two sentences, Guruji exclaimed that for that very reason only Mritchakatikam was composed. We'll have to find out the sole purpose of any literary composition in that way. We forget everything and still something is being remembered or just kept lingering on upon. We'll have to find out that that was the sole purpose of that particular composition. Now, I continue the quotation. प्राचीन समीक्षा में जहां सहृदय को केंद्र में रखा जाता था, वहां आज रचनाकार केंद्र में प्रतिष्ठित किया जाने लगा है. This is paradigm shift. Creation was aimed at Sahradaya, connoisseur, Bhavak, who shall be the person who will relish the work. Now the focus has come on the Rachanakar, the composer himself or herself. Now it is the Kruti, it is the literary work which is becoming the photograph of the person who is presenting before you the same thing. We'll have to learn that the things have changed. In criticism, we are becoming very critical about every word. I have also gone through some pages of some research works in where they have counted the numbers of usage of particular word in that particular composition. Maths, physics, chemistry, sociology, and whatever possible subject can be entered into the subject, they have been employed to search in that way that how far the things are being assessed from whatever type of angle it can be assessed. And finally, we'll have to focus on the outcome of the particular tendency and also the effort. आज रचनाकार केंद्र में प्रतिष्ठित किया जाने लगा है. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पैसेज नाउ. संस्कृत के क्षेत्र में अब भी संस्कृत आधुनिक समीक्षा दृष्टि का विकास हुआ हो, यह मेरे संज्ञान में नहीं है. A scholar of greatly high repute is confessing in his great work, संस्कृत के क्षेत्र में अब भी स्वतंत्र आधुनिक समीक्षा दृष्टि का विकास हुआ हो, यह मेरे संज्ञान में नहीं है. And I have no option but to agree with this gentleman. यदि हुआ है, यदि नहीं हुआ है, तो प्रबुद्ध संस्कृतज्ञ समाज को इस दिशा में ध्यान देना चाहिए. We'll have to start. Let us start a new phase for honest and correct way of assessing the creations of great masters in the way in which they should have been treated. यदि नहीं हुआ है तो प्रबुद्ध संस्कृतज्ञ समाज को इस दिशा में ध्यान देना चाहिए. प्राचीन आचार्यों के द्वारा निर्दिष्ट मार्ग पर चलते हुए आज के युग में प्रकाश में आ रहे साहित्य का पर्यालोचन अवश्य करना चाहिए. तब भी साहित्य को गति और दिशा मिल सकेगी, अन्यथा उसके गतिहीन और दिशाहीन होने का भय बना रहेगा. This is the last sentence of this quotation. Anyatha, in absence of proper method of evaluating the Sanskrit literary composition, anyatha, the whole trend will lose its direction and its tempo. अन्यथा उसके गतिहीन और दिशाहीन होने का भय बना रहेगा. This is the sole purpose for which I was very happy to accept the invitation of Dr. Gavdeji. I believe that for Sanskrit literary criticism, a new age has yet to be started, and all our efforts will be fruitful, I hope. Now I speak on 2-3 things more as far as the matter is considered. Findings of several points before commencing the job of literary criticism. Or by the way, the word research, there is no equivalent word to the word research. We have Gaveshana, we have Parishilan, we have Anushilan, we have Gabhira Madhyena, etc., etc., etc. Shodha we are sometimes using Anusandhan, but we know these are the words which may be near to the concept, but they are not that particular indicative word. Urge for self-expression. The poetry itself is indicating to the sole purpose that something needs to be expressed, manifested. Now the purpose is maybe varied and different in that particular object. For example, Jagannath Pandit proudly says that I am composing even the examples for my own figures of speech. This is expression. He wants to express something. At some point, he wants to mock at some other people with whom he has no good relations. Vijjika, the poetess, speaks about herself, Sarva Shukla Saraswati, Mam Ajanata. People didn't know me. So these are the sentences which need to be explored again and again to understand the psyche. Search for new meaning. If someone has nothing to express newly or differently, he or she would not have endured for anything. Nobody would like to be a copycat or to be at least labeled as copycat. Nobody wants to exactly follow the same thing. He or she wants to amend, to enrich, to make something afresh. In India, particularly in Asia itself, but India in particular has the tradition, whatever is to be given newly will have to be presented first as following the path of ancients. Prachinaha, Purve, iti Sushruma, Shruyate, something like that. And then very politely, humbly, and sometimes very cleverly, the thing is put before the readers or connoisseurs. And then it is presented. This is my humble presentation in a different view. 9th century, Jayant Bhatt, Nyaya Manjari of Nyaya Manjari fame, expressed that my forefathers, or rather our forefathers, have completed all the jobs. What is left for us? Where should we work? On what should we work? And he himself answers, I have very unique thing with me to present things differently. Presentation of things very differently from the previous line, presenting in a very innovative way, with new dimensions, with kaleidoscopic arrangement of the things in such a way that it becomes a fresh and new. And that's why Kalidas used the word Purana Mityavana Sadhu Sarvam. The word Navina, the word Navyaha was regarded as some persons who want to express some revolutionary thing. Prancham Mate, Ittitu Navinaha, something like that. These type of words needs to be culled out from this heritage because these are very necessary to make a different voice presentation in this particular Shastra of criticism. When we speak about Nutana, Kshane Kshaneyan Lavata Mupeti Tadeva Rupam Ramaniyataya, the whole concept of beauty is resting upon its novelty. Ever new, Navanitatvam. So the human urge for having something new, presenting something new, thinking something new is, I think, very old. And in that sense, it is Sanatana. The things as they are will remain as they are. What a poet shall do, he will see from different angle, from which nobody else previously has seen it. And that is the Shakhtar of Truth. The poet is searching for the truth, the realization of the fact. What does it convey? What does it mean? What is the purport of word? What is the essence of meaning? What is the secret behind the effective communication? What is the purpose of being itself? These questions have started coming in the mind of progressive poets, and they are referring to them now and then, here and there in their works from the time immemorial. Bhama is telling something else, then the whole line is coming there, adding something, omitting something, and one school of Alankara starts. One school of aesthetic presentation is already present in Puranas, and the taker is Bhoja of Sringar Prakash fame. They are having their own line. Another tradition of creativity, as far as creativity, poetic genius is considered, is already there in the line of Ayurveda, in line of Shilpa Shastra, in line of Jyotish Shastra, in line of erotics, in line of any other things which we do not consider at present as the composition of literary composition. But the beauty of language is there. Presentation, marvelous, show of expression of the pratibha is always there. So we have to take into consideration all these things as broader perspective of Sahitya. We cannot reject Palandu Shatakam just as it is referring to the voice of Ayurveda and very beautifully poetic presentation of onion. Palandu Shatakam is there. This type of creativity is scattered here and there in different way. We need to pay attention to each and every word of those great masters who have composed their works for the betterment of ideas, for the fineness, for attaining the fineness in our perception, as well as elevating our inner soul to relish the joy, the aesthetic joy. Now we come to the things which I hurriedly go through, that when we are taking into consideration about the objective of any poet or surjak for that matter, we'll have to ask ourselves first that we'll have to make an interrogation that which school is being propagated by this gentleman. Either he is coming from the line of rasa, where karuna is given the prominence, or rasa shrungara is given prominence, or rasa shanta is given prominence, or rasa as Narayana is giving adbhuta as prominence, or like Madhusudan Saraswati, bhakti is the prominence. These are different thoughts of schools as far as aesthetic experience is concerned. And as their goal is different, their presentation is different, their tarattamatva is different, we have to consider their ways very differently. We are also thinking that we will have to also take into consideration from which school of learning the gentleman has entered into the school of poetry, whether he is coming from the line of Shabdikas, whether he is well versed in Nayayaka, whether he is coming from Mimamsa, whether he is coming from the line of Sankhya Yoga, yogic tradition, or pure Alankara, or he is coming from Dharma Shastra or that type of particular different background. Every time you will find a different person from different line. One Mahima Bhatta representing the line of Nayayika is alone in his field, and his work is inevitable to be studied. We will have to take consideration about the views, though we may not believe or we may not agree. People who are speaking about the Navya Nyaya in the field of Darshana cannot forget that they have a great impression on the line of poetic genius, right from the days of Jagannath Pandit to the line of great scholar from Almora of this 18th century, Vishweshwar Pandey. We fail to understand a single sentence if we do not pay attention to the way in which they are presenting Navya Nyaya. Now, what was the purpose of implementation of different kinds of expression, different kind of presentation, and different kind of schools in discussing the sole subject of beauty, bliss, and pleasure? We have to think very seriously that the voice which is coming from the heart of poet is coupled with many ideas of his education, of his likings, of his dislikes, of his choice of particular objectives, and also his choice of particular formats. I am also highly obliged by Varanekar-ji. Since more than 20 years, I am reading his works. Varanekar, Sanskrit Vangmay Kosh Part 1 is given. Before many years, I had read one of his lines that everything which is coming in the periphery of literary composition is coming in the periphery of Kama Shastra, Kama Purushartha rather. Wherever we are talking about any pleasure, it will have to be counted in the fold of Kama Purushartha. And he had described at length the content and extent of Kama Purushartha. Anyway, we will also think twice when we are reading about the lines of the great masters which are coming from the line of monks and renunciates, rather Jain Munis. They have composed highly poetic excellence, full of excellence, the composition of Sringara, compositions of Laukika Sahitya, and they have placed in the beginning of their works. We have lowered down our position just to bless the people in which they are living we will express our ideas in such a way that people slowly and gradually elevate themselves. So we are taking resort to this literary composition. Otherwise, these were banned from the path of sadhana or path of from the line of spiritual progress. These things are banned. But still, those monks, those great masters from sannyasi, have composed beautiful compositions. There also we have to think twice why religion and religious works are replete with compositions which are full of shringara, full of these sentiments, expressing the life in its fullness. We must not fail to understand the unity of both the things at inner level. The same thing, when elevated, becomes the other. So here also we'll have to think that whenever we are coming nearer to the psyche of our composers or our literary great masters, we think that whenever the life is there, the reflection of life is always there. Modern great poet Radha Vallabh Tripathi once said that Loka Vrittanu Rananam Kavyam. Many modern poets have composed works styled in the works of Mammata or Vishwanatha, but the best line which I remember still after 25 years, Lokavrittanu Rananam. He stressed upon the word Rananam. This is Rananam, Anurananam. I am putting the poetry as nothing but past, present, or future presentation of Lokavritta in its fuller way, in its broader way, and it will be Anuranana. Anuranana means expression in whatever way which looks like something like which is tinkling, which is emitting some sound, which is sweet to the heart and pleasing. Now, is the poetry that particular asylum when we take shelter? Yes, people have tried and people have understood the purport of these great compositions from the days of Vedas and from the days of both the Mahakavyas, Ramayana and Mahabharata. Great scholars admit that these Mahakavyas are itihasa and at the same time they are literary compositions. The beauty of these great compositions is that their kavyatva or their literary aspects are such subtle that we hardly come to notice as we come to find from the pen of Bharavi or Magha or Srihars. This is very interesting to note that Varanakarji is describing that Vishayananda is for Laukika, Rasananda is for Saharadaya, and Brahmananda is for Yogi or Sadhakas. And this is very useful for our understanding of Brahmananda Sahodara. It is reaching to that particular very nearer stage of Brahmananda. And here we should think about also the lines which has been chosen by the other religions. There is one Bauddha Lankara Granth. There is also a tradition from Jainas where they have worked hard for presenting Kavi Shiksha, Amar Yati, and the commentaries composed on that particular book. Now we'll have to also think about some particular terms which are used in this particular job of assessment and critical appreciation. The philosophy of Bhagavad Purana says, Guna dosha drashir dosha. Making a differentiation between guna and dosha itself is a dosha. But naturally it cannot be acceptable here. One thing, adosham gunavat kavyam. The bereft of any blemishes is something else. And profusely application of attributes is something else. It is also very interesting to know that the word guna is being applied to enhance something, to the main body. And when the same thing, when it is used in abstract, it is gauna. It is becoming secondary. So guna and gona, guni bhuta, rather, needs to be attended very seriously with great effort. That from where does this word and its connotation come? We are having the words dhvani. We are having the breathing. We are having auchitya. We are having anything which can be applied to this particular science of appreciating a particular literary composition. Grammar, vanam pravishati or vane pravishati. While taking into consideration the literary study of any piece, will have to have the employment of 2, 3, 4 things: the Vyutpatti, the Vyakarana, the Kosha, the usage, the tradition of poetic license, Kavi Samaya, and all these things. Poet like Bhavabhuti exclaims that Utpasyate kopi samana dharma. Somebody will appear who will be understand or who will relish my works. So inner moods and inner emotions are also playing major role in the presentation of the. Otherwise, Ramayana was already there. Numerous compositions on Rama and Sita have appeared after that, with an altogether different voice from the original one. Mahabharata was always there, but Bharvi opted for a different presentation of Duryodhana. When a messenger is briefing Yudhishthira that Duryodhana is ruling the people with great joy and people are very happy under his regime. Bhasa is seeing differently for the characters of both the epics, we know. So ideas behind these compositions, the intentions behind this type of presentation should need our attention. That what was the reason of thinking differently? Digvijaya is expressed in both the epics, both the Mahakavyas, both the Itihasa Kavyas. But have anyone thought on the other side where the people of the other countries were suppressed and compelled to give this wealth of immense value? Has there been any effort to speak about the original voice of a man individual? We are selecting our heroes from the great race, great Kula. Has there been anyone who is speaking for his own sake? Yes, there are some exceptional presentations, but generally we should think that now the age has come in such a way where individual, a personal, is becoming in the focus of the literary composition. His trials and tribulations are finding voice in these great compositions of modern age. Some of the examples I would like to discuss here. Compositions are there. We find their connection with history. We find their connection with the composer's psyche. We find their connection with the language in which they were composed. We also find their objectives, rather fame or competition or wealth or just expression of something which is very necessary, the composer felt, to enrich the line chosen by him or her. For us, as the word Kavaya is having epithet Nirankushaha, we are also having, there is, sky is the limit for the field of research. A piece can be evaluated and assessed in thousand-fold ways. Yet, the beauty and the soul of the work needs to be attended carefully, because whenever we are using the tools which are not fit for it, mars the beauty of the whole world. I have selected some examples from modern literature. Before that, I would like to speak about something about the ancient tradition where there was different words for presenting that similar idea. The word Saundaryam Alankara, Su Undati, Vamati, Bahihi, Saundaryam, emitting the beauty out from within. Alankara, as I said earlier, Alam Karoti, Paryaptam, is becoming or making it fuller and trying to reach to the level of the fullest capacity of that particular task. Alankarastu Abharanam. Amar Kosh is explaining the word Abharanam. It is Asamantat Bharanam, feeling in. That's why the whole line is recognized as Alankarikas. No other word has been able to take its place. We do not call the line as Rasikas. We do not call as Dhvanikas. We do not call them the Ritikaras or something like that. Alankarikas have remained there. Though the word was used in very strict way. When the word Alankara was used for every aspect of literary composition, later on it started losing its glory and was used, left only for expression of figures of speech. Now, I would like to draw your attention that in Sanskrit creativity field, all these things are slowly and gradually being dropped altogether. In modern Sanskrit writing, no particular insisting upon is there for following this particular old thoughts, old ideas, old views. Why? Because the person is living in this age where he has found his own way. The examples will give the witness to this particular presentation that why it has happened. But before that, one more word. The Sampradaya called Vakrokti had takers like Bhamaha, Udbhata, Rudrata, Dandi, the followers of Puranic tradition of Alankar was followed by Agni Purana and Bhoja and others. And there was altogether a different path who included a dramaturgy in the great fold of Alankarikans. Vaidabhya Bhangi Bhaniti, they refer to it. And one particular sentence needs attention again and again. Atishayoktis eva pranatvena avatishtate. This is very important word. When something is crossing its limits and coming into the periphery of called Atishayokti, it has been said well beyond the limit. It is the starting point of the literary composition. When people are besmeared with this type of particular imagination, that yes, it is something terrific, it is something astonishing, it is something irresistible. It is very difficult to forget it. It captures our mind continuously. We are not able to leave it. This type of compositions are created when these things happen. Very traditional way of looking at the work of poet and work of critics. Kavi karoti kavyani rasam janati pandita. We know that sometimes even poets have not thought what type of meaning can be taken out from their compositions. This is the truth. Then we have the word Kavi Shiksha, as I said earlier. There was a different training that your Pratibhanatva is there, but it too needs some help from training, from skill, from learning, and all these things, educations. The fundamental thing cannot be avoided. Rest things can be changed as per the choice and need. Before starting, this lecture, I will briefly narrate about the modern points which they are including in this particular way of critical approach of any literary composition. First, they are thinking about history. Yes, history is very important. Taking plots, then form in which they will compose, why they are choosing this way, why particular epithets have been applied to the particular form, Natakantam, Natakantam Kavitvam, why Gadyam Kavisham Nikadam Vadanti, why Kalaratnam Geetam. All these things need our special attention to think about that. Historical background as well as mythological background, archetypal approach, and also the approach of psychological presentation from the inner world of the poet. Then the philosophy, worldview about the life, about the destiny, about the relationship, about the surroundings. Then sociology and all aspects associated with it as a society. And also one should not forget about the feminist aspect. It is having its deep root in our ancestral heritage. Yatha strinam tatha vacham sadhutve durjano jana. Bhagavati cries that people are very, very, very critical about women. Kanyo hi artha parikiya eva. Kanya. I will cite some examples from the modern poetry also. What we have thought about the gender, what we have thought about the class, what we have thought about the position, what we have thought about the learning, what we have thought about the outcome of all our efforts as a human being. I take your leave for 5 minutes just to have rest. This is the background for which I have selected some examples which will reflect today's content of our aspect of literary criticism. Madam, I am taking leave for 5 minutes only and I will resume back.
Yes, sir. Sure.
विद्यार्थियों के लिए एक सूचना है, चैट बॉक्स में एक फीडबैक फॉर्म दिया गया है, वो फीडबैक फॉर्म प्लीज भरिए। हेलो, मेरी आवाज आ रही है? हेलो।
Hello? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yes, yes, sir. Can I start now?
Yes, sir. Sure. Please start.
Now I'll start with some few examples which will give some light, shed some light on this particular topic.
Yes.
I was fortunate to have edited one Sanskrit commentary called Chandrika on Saundarya Lahari of Shankaracharya in 2015, wherein I found one reference to a very particular and peculiar message from the pen of the commentator called Sunna Bhatta. He lived in the 20th century, first part, and he composed wonderful Sanskrit commentary on Saundarya Lahari, wherein his scholarship of Kashmiri Shaivism, Shakhtar Sampradaya, and aesthetic Alankar Shastra is found to be very marvelous. One line is, I'm quoting, Tvadiyanam bhasam pratipalanalabharunataya shariri sungaro rasaiva drasham dogdhi kutukam. Poet is praising Mother Goddess that with reflection of your limbs, it appears that sentiment called Sungara himself has appeared incarnate and looking Aruna of red color and Dogdi Kutukam. It is fascinating. This view is fascinating me. This is the original line of Shankaracharya, where he is trying to depict Shungara Rasa as of having color red or saffron, Aruna. Commentary reads, Atra Shungar Rasasya Arunatva Nirupane Sri Bhagavad Padaha Eva Pramanam. This is the one way of disagreement with the great masters. The commentator says that in this depiction of Shungar Rasa as saffron color, having a saffron color or red color, I don't know from where this Maharaja Shankar has taken this source. He himself is the Pramana. I don't know. Because Natya Shastre tasya Shyamatva Pratipadanat Yat Aha Bharatah Shyamo Bhavati Shungarah iti. Now this is a small line indicating to the existence of an altogether different school of presentation of all the sentiments with their visual depiction. As we are having the visual depiction of divination, divinized form of all the matrukas in Tantra, where all 64 phonemes are represented as divine incarnations. So this is very interesting to note here that particular critical approach of the commentator indicates about the possibility of the existence of a new source of presentation, the depiction of sentiments in a different way. He is also quoting another commentator who is speaking something else on this one. Kaivalyashrama, the another commentator. Kaivalyashramastu Shrangar Rasasya Anuraga Pradhana Rajo Guna Mayatvat Aruna Guna Iha Pratipaditah iti aha. He is just quoting him and doesn't comment on it at all. He says that Kaivalyashrama in favor of presenting or rather going with Shankara with the explanation that Shringara is having Rajo Pradhana in this Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Though this is not convincing, but this is a point where particular thought is presented in a different way. I have selected some quotations from the modern poetry which give some ideas about this aesthetic experience and its evaluation. What should a poet have? Jagjivan Bhatt of 18th century, the poet of Ajitoday Mahakavya from Rajasthan speaks. शास्त्रज्ञो न च शाब्दिको अस्म्युतमः साहित्य विन्नास्म्यहं नो जानाम्यहमद्भुतार्थ विलसत् सत्काव्य संयोजनां देवी काचिदिहाब्जयोनि तनया पाणिस्थ वीणाकल क्वाणानंदरता निरीक्ष सुरेणम brute tumat kanthaga. In brief, the poet is expressing his ignorance, that I don't know anything which is very necessary to be a poet. I don't know Shastra. I am not a person well versed in Shabda Shastra, that is grammar. I have never ever tried to learn about the great literary heritage, Maha Sahityavit, nor do I know any type of skill in composition of Adbhutarth Vilasat Satkavya. Still, I think that goddess of learning Saraswati thought that this boy is having no knowledge and he is remaining such jada, sujade. He is using the word for him, sujada. And with compassion, goddess Saraswati herself poured all the beauty, all the marvelous thing in me, and I could compose this great Mahakavya. Now, this is the representation of one view where we hear the stories about Chamatkara. Where we learn about some miraculous things happening in the lives of great masters. Say Naishada, who is Sriharsa muttered the Chintamani mantra, where Kalidasa had a pursuit of Kali sadhana and all these things. Now we can have two things in our mind, that poetic genius is something else, grace of divinity is something else, and this type of composition of all this type of literary world is different. In modern research, we learn to think that this is either humility or the presentation of the fact that the ideas were flourished in his mind in one fine moment, and it took the form of the poetry in a different way, which is beyond description. But still, the role of learning, role of continuous effort, role of making Herculean task of acquiring the skill in composition of literary work is always there. This is one example. Every creator, that is literary master, wants independence, and that independence is coming from within. In Raghunath Gunodaya, Chandidas of 19th century, court poet of Maharaja Ranjit Singh of Punjab, composed one poem about Ramchandra himself, Lord Ramchandra. Pashya Rama Radayam Yathat Nijam Tanmanopi Tatheva Nishchinu Asti Tannacha Tatheti Samsaye Sakshi Chitta Mubayor Hinaparam. Sita says to Rama in this composition, Rama, don't think about the love affair between us. Our chitta, ubayoho, is sakshi. You need not have any approval from either side. It reminds us, satami sandeha padeshu vastusu pramanamanta karana pravruttaya. Dushyanta, when having some doubt mental in his mind about the origin or kula of Shakuntala, he is answering his own question in this way, that satami sandeha padeshu vastusu pramanamanta karana pravruttaya. Very surprisingly, our Dharma Shastra heritage also having one particular aspect of having importance of inner voice. Veda Smriti Sadachara Swasya Cha Priyamatmana. Veda, Smriti literature, noble conduct of great personalities, and Swasya Cha Priyamatmana. When the inner soul approves the things, it is approvable. So this is very common thing where great masters are expressing in the same way and as far as their inner voice is considered. Now Kshama Rao from Pune in 20th century composed one Mahakavya on his father Shankar Pandurang Pandit, Shankar Jivanakhyanam Mahakavyam, wherein she underlines one particular aspect of honesty, values, character building, and self-assessment. Nupo hichin maho odaryat prayachet paritoshikam naiva tat pratigruhniya tadanarha asichet kshame. She is addressing to herself as if her father is advising her. Oh Kshame, oh daughter, don't take any prize from even the kings if you think yourself not fit for that particular thing. Now, these are the values to be inculcated in this generation, in this educational field of bringing the children. About Kavita, when we are talking about Kavita, when we are talking about Kavya Karma, when we are talking about the duties, when poets themselves are expressing, it becomes some altogether different thing. Satyavat Shastri of our age composed Indira Gandhi Charit, in which one particular verse, Sukavita, Sukaveriva Kasyachit, Sugatita Pratimeva Sushilpinaha, Suramaniyam Risheriva Darshanam, Lasati Shanti Niketana Madbhutam. In describing Shanti Niketan, he is paying tributes to Kavivar Rabindranath Thakur, Suramaniyam Rishehe Darshanam. Before that, he is using the word Sukavehe Kasyachit Sukavehe Kavita, Sukavita. A poetry needs to be the poetry from a well-seasoned and erudite scholar. Sugatita Pratimeva Sushilpinaha. It should be a nice image sculpted by a great craft master or sculptor. Satyavrata Shastri himself has used one sentence which is giving voice of female. Ramosmi Sarvam Sahe. One word we come across in Uttar Ramacharita of Bhavbhuti, where Rama is speaking about himself. I will bear all these things, all these turmoils, all these troubles. I will face happily because I am Rama. I am capable of doing so. In Satyavrata Shastri's book, Sita is uttering a sentence which is having that type of particular sense. Sri Ramakirti Mahakavya, composed on the Ram story of Thailand, Satyavrata Shastri ji puts these words in the mouth of Sita. Patyur viyogo mayaka visodas chiraya sampratyahamaश्रमेस्मिन् dirgham sahishye sutayor viyogam sitasmi sarvam mama sahyameva. Now this is very important. As far as the presentation of feminine voice in the literature, she has put even one step ahead than Rama of Bhavbhuti. Now poetry, about poetry. Poets themselves have given their voice about the art of composition. Bhola Shankar Vyas of 20th century, coming from the princely state Raj Pandit of Bundi, Rajasthan, composed one Shakti Jaya Mahakavya, where he is describing poetry. Rajani Virato Pratyusheshu Spurachiti Sagare Sarva Virahitam Swantargitam Layotkalika Kalam Madhura Madhuresh Chando Bhedei Parartha Rasolvanai Prathayasi Pare Murtim Ramyam Kave Kila Vaikarim. Is having a scholarship tradition. Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikari. This voice has come down unto me. The poet expresses it how Rajani Virato, at the end of the night of darkness and ignorance, Pratyushesho, when the dawn was appearing, the early morning, Spurachiti Sagare, when my consciousness was alert, Rava Virahitam, peacefully, with calmness, Swantargitam, an inner voice, inner poetry, automatically, in its own, appeared with rhythm, Laya Utkalika Kalam, Madhura Madhure Chando Bhedehi. It took on its own the form and the presentation and the formats, meters, etc. Parartha Rasol Banaihi, in which the rasa automatically became the excellent meaning of Paravani. Prathayasi pare murtim ramyam kavehe kilavai kavehe ramyam murtim. This is the poetic genius of this poet, which is expressing that poetry is nothing but an image sculpted by the master sculptor poet. We are finding glimpses of philosophical thoughts in the poetry in Sanskrit or world poetry. Reva Prasad Dwivedi of 20th century, in his Swatantra Sambhavam Mahakavyam, depicting Dampatya life, Dampatya Jivan of Jawahar and Kamala Nehru, wrote one shloka, one verse. Veda Vedam Pratipadya Vedam Punarvrajanti Rasakulya Keva Dampatya Dhara Kamala Shirasu Jawaharasya Pavivartanani. This is a beautiful composition as far as the philosophical thought is considered. Vedat Abhedam. They were two, become united as one. Then again, Pratipadya Bhedam, Dohada, she was expecting child. Punar Vrajanti Rasakulya Keva, she is now roaming here and there like a small river, Rasakulya Keva. Dampatya Dhara Kamala Shirasu. In the vein of this heroine Kamala, Dampatya Dhara is having different manifestation as if the poet is describing the different phase of philosophical achievements. What is Dharma? Depiction of Dharma we find in the Shivarajyodaya Mahakavya of Sridhar Bhaskar Varnekar, where he is describing Shivaraja. Kim jivitena vibhavena sukhena tena kim bharabhuta karavaladanu krupanaihi kim paurushena yadina prabhavami patum godeva veda vanita vidasadu sanghan. Now this is particular verse which I want to express, through which I want to express the beauty of dharma, beauty of duty, beauty of a person who is in charge of protecting the subject. Now this is the depiction and this is the duty of a composer, where he is pointing out towards the responsibilities. Paramananda Shastri, of great merit, having poetical merit, from Aligarh Muslim University from first half of last century, composed one Mahakavya, Chir Harana Mahakavya, on the episode of Draupadi Chir Harana, wherein he is depicting a new idea. Mamannadate tijana samastah sambodhayantyatra navedi tattvam vicharya pashyan khalu nishchinomi mamapi nityam krusakonnadata. Yudhishthir says that all people call me as Annadata. I don't know what is the fact behind it, but when I contemplate upon the fact, I find that Krushakaha Annadata, Mama Api, even for me, the peasant is Annadata. Now, this is the new idea, giving the scope to the laborers and peasants and all workmen. And it is depicted as a dialogue from the mouth of Yudhishthira in Chir Harana Mahakavya by modern poet. One R.K. Narayan Pillai in 20th century wrote Swami Vivekananda Mahakavya, wherein he depicts the idea of becoming a sadhu, a renunciate, with purpose of Manava Seva. Paratmanah praspurite jagatyalam vilokayan manava divyatam sada satam hitam yat vitanoti sevanam tadeva mukti pradamatmano matam. Vivekananda of this poet says that for me, liberation is nothing but Manava divyatam sada vilokayan satam hitam yat vitanoti sevanam. I will serve the humanity. So Manav Seva is becoming the motto of the life of Vivekananda, has been depicted as the prime duty of human race. We are reminded an olden statement from Srimad Bhagavat. Natvaham kamaye swargam na punarbhavam kamaye dukkhataptanam jananam arti nashanam. I don't want moksha. Rantidev, King Rantidev has spoken these words centuries before. So for poet, the idea of depiction of this type of personalities in a different way is having even the space in its modern interpretation. Madhava Shri Hari Arne, Bapuji Arne, composed his very celebrated Mahakavya Tilaka Yashornava in 3 parts, wherein he emphatically presenting before us the image of Lokmanya Tilak. Na prarthana na vignaptir vaikhyam naivacha naivacha parakramena siddhanti swatantrasya manorathaha. The depiction of the urge for swatantra, independence. This is not only the independence of a country, it is the independence of a human, independence of a man, independence of a sarjak, independence of a person who is thinking about his own destiny. So, na prarthana, na vignaptir, bhaikshyam, bhiksha, naiva cha, parakramena siddhanti, swatantrasya manoratha. So, human liberty, utmost sentiment of becoming free from all bondage. One person who is very famous from Maharashtra settled down in Kashi for his Vindhya Nivasini Vijay Mahakavyam, Vasant Trambak Shevade. His statement is, though looking very bold, but one who has read his poem will have to agree. Vindhya Vasini Vijay Mahakavyam, he is considering himself to be the only third in the line of great masters in depicting Vaidarbhi Riti. Kavi Kula Guru Madho Shishriye Kalidasam Tadanucha Kavi Mallam Billanam Ya Prapede Smarahara Charanabde Chancharikam Vasantam Shrayati Kavi Midanim Seva Vedarbhariti. This type of statements are very important as far as the selection of particular form of literary composition is considered. People have spoken about themselves. People have also spoken about the other people when they are thinking about some speciality of this type of genre, wherein they are excelled their predecessor, or the person Vasant Trambak Shevade is comparing himself as just number 3 after Kalidas and Bilhana. And I have read some of his poetry, Vasant Trambak Shevade. There is no exaggeration at all. He is a master craftsman of Sanskrit literary composition. Now again, novelty or presentation or innovation or idea of something new is lingering in the mind of creators always, all time to come. Vidyadhar Shastri in 20th century beginning composed one Mahakavya, Haranama Mrutam Mahakavyam, on the life of his own father, great-grandfather, Pandit Haranama Datta, where he is depicting the particular aspect of composition. Pratikshanam yatra matir navina, gatir navine vacha yatra nityam, katham na tasmin navavastu kavyam, yuge yuge na vyavimarsha shile. My poetry in this new age becoming ever new, where every moment my intellect, my consciousness is perceiving new ideas, and my way of understanding Gatir Navina, Nityam, Katham na tasmin Navamastu Kavyam. So this is a voice of new poetry in the beginning of 20th century. Very astonishing example coming from the pen of one person who composed one Mahakavya on the life of Jesus Christ. In Kerala, 20th century beginning, one poet called P.C. Devasya composed Mahakavya on life of Jesus Christ called Christu Bhagavatam. Drumasthitakrauncha nishodana vyatha vyadat puravyadamunim mahakavim ajatmadasyatmabaleranuspurtihi suchetasam kam na kavim karishyati. He is an example of Adi Kavi Valmiki. There is a great tragedy which appeared before the eyes of Adi Kavi Valmiki. One bird was killed by hunter, and that particular patho, particular Vedana, particular Karunata, propelled Vyada Muni, Purvam Vyada Paschat Muni, Vyada Muni, Adi Kavi. He was made Adi Kavi, Mahamuni, great sage by this incident. Why not this saga of Atma Balidan, self-sacrifice of a person of Ajat Madasya, whose mother was not married, Mary Virgin. Anusmritihi, why not the memories of this great saint, great liberator, Jesus Christ, will not make anyone kavi, na kam kavim karishyati. This is the urge of that type of emotions which are very, very important in turning the life of great masters. So this is very a particular example of importance of emotions. Vijendranath Shastri of 20th century, middle part, composed one kavya, Swarajya Vijaya Mahakavya, wherein depicting all other aspects, he is also speaking about what is kavita. Rasojjvala bhava gunadi garbha, salankriti riti mati pragalbha, sakapyodara kruti namudeti, manyeti punyena hi kavyadhara. A poetry must be having good shining rasa, bhava, guna, alankara, riti, pragalbhata. Kritinameva, punyashalinameva, krite. Udara, this great tradition of poetic genius, is down upon this mind of those who are having ati punya. This kavya dhara, I think poet says, I think this is the fruit of great amount of very good deeds which we have performed in previous life. I am juxtaposing this particular poetry with another one, wherein very famous poet Bhatt Mathuranath Shastri is speaking Shabdana Spuranti Rachanasu Napi Bhasha Vashe Na Punarashesha Vritta Bandhe Prabhavishyamaha Dasa Iva Nayanti Vacha Manuprasa Api Bhava Manayasa Abhivyaktum Nollasaishyamaha Manjunath Manasika Mododgarametam Manju Kavita Niketam Krucha Bhave Bharishyamaha. Kavi Shakti Lolupta is the topic of this poet. When the people are having not that type of ability, and still they are striving hard to become poet, he is presenting this particular expression for them, and it is in the form of satire. Shabdaha na spuranti, rachanasu api, bhasha na vashe, na shrutta gandhe. There is no ability of particular composition in particular metrical versification. Dasa even no ayanti vacham anuprasa. Even I am not having control. These people do not have any control over any type of figures of speech. Prastha yava yoga eva vikalam vayatu vayo nevirodha vacho vayam kavayo bhavishyama. And still we think that we shall be poets. Modern thought on Alankara. Pandit Badrinath Jha, Kavi Shekhar, a great name in literary criticism. Anyokti Sahasri, in one of his Anyokti, he says, Analankratapi Kavivak, Ramaniya Vyangya Sangata Bhavati, Nirbhushanapi Ramani, Rajati Lavanya Yogena. Inner beauty of composition is stressed upon this poetry that Rajati Ramani Lavanya Yogena. Lavanya is enough, beauty is enough for a female beauty where there is no need of any ornaments. Even this applies with Kavi Vak. Analankritapi Ramaniya Bhavati, if it is having some suggestivity of high class. Vyangya Sangata Bhavati. Philosophical topics, some of the traits have been indicated in one Shanti Kavya. It's a very unique poetry of Mahidhar Venkatram Shastri of 20th century. In his poem called Manas Rasa Keli, which has been translated into Sanskrit again as Hridaya Padyam Shanti Kavyam, or mirthful dance of mind. Janati yaschitta vrittim nigudham sashanti mapnoti vikara durah. This is the couplet which is applied at the top of the poetry. Now, why I have quoted this example is to show that he is taking the words from the line of yogic presentation, and he is speaking about the poetry. Mano buddhischittam vathapradagahankara iti tat chaturthayamantah karanamayate karyavashatah manah sankalpasya prabhuriti jagat karyamakilam tadayattam tena prachalati chatursvasya mahima. He is speaking about the fold aspects of mental apparatus, mano, buddhi, chitta, and ahankara. And he is describing beautifully that this is the manas sankalpasya prabhu, who is the master of his own determination, mental determination, is becoming everything or whatever he wants, wishes to be. Jagat karyam akilam tadayattam tena prachalati. So he is expressing in such a way where philosophical aspects are described in poetry very beautifully for inspiration as well as motivation. Now, one name of modern poetry, all-time great, Keshav Chandra Das from Jagannath Puri. In his Isha Kavya, he is depicting the modern terrible tragedy of modern age. Gruhamiva Kurukshetram Karmashala Hinsramala Ganga Nadina Chirapravaha Sammukhe Dandyamana Bharatiyata Nah Kritadasi Iva. Keshav Chandra Das is one of the modern Sanskrit poets who opened the doors for modernity to enter into the Sanskrit field. Nava Nilaya Anveshane Ramati Puratana Pantha. This is the line of his another poem. Nava Nilaya Anveshane Ramati Puratana Pantha. Old traveler, fatigued traveler, is trying to find a new refuge, new house. Now comes one another scholar, one another modern poet, Harshadeva Madhav, depicting the futility of life. One is Aiku, Mama Swapnani, poet's dreams. Mohenjo Dado Vat, Mohenjo Dado Gruham, the ruins of Mohenjo Dado is becoming the house to stay in. Ko Vaset Tatra, who will be able to live there? Now, this poetry, it is transcending all the norms of traditional Sanskrit literary aspects. One of his another small poem of mono image, Nagaram, 3 lines. Buddhasya Bhiksha Patre, 1 line. Second line, Nimajjitam Asti. And third line, Anubambadagdham Nagaram. Now, this is the poetry which crosses the limits of this creativity. Sanket Rahite Nagare, one poetry depicts the modern life as under. Sanket Rahitam Patram Bhutva Aham Nivasami Tava Nagare He Alakanande Shakini Vat Praskhalanti Basayanani Loshtavat Stabdham Nagarodhyane Sarovarasya Jalam Heat Shalabtulya Nagarikaha Sukardanta Samaha Yubalait Prakasha. Now, this is the example of modern poetry where no particular tact of ancient aesthetic or rather the literary tradition has been followed at all. Sanket Rahitam Patram Bhutva Aham Nivasami Tavanagare Yatra Basayanani Praskalanti Shakini Vat Lostavat Stabdam Nagarodhyane Sarovarasya Jalam. Every selection of all words are striking with this particular new image this poet has used profusely the inculcation of all these new ideas, and he is very famous for his imagination, Kalpanavad, Pratikvad, symbolism, and surrealism, Ati Vastavavad, and also Cubism, where the ideas are concentrated in particular one or two images. Radha Vallabh Tripathi, in his one composition called Lahari Dashakam, describing modern leader, political leader, समारूढ़ नभो मंचो गर्जन मेघो न वर्षति भाषमाणो अक्रियो नेता जनताया पुरो यथा. He is giving example to describe Megha. He is citing the example of political leader who is doing nothing but just भाषमाणः जनताया पुरः. This is unconventional thing. Is another small composition. Gacchati purato desha punariha pashchat pradrishyate janata koyam samajavadaha pragatirva kidrashi seyam. This is the parody of Shakuntal's description of Ashwa. Gacchati purato desha punariha pashchat pradrishyate janata. We are informed that country is making progress, but how then this fate of public, fate of common people is lagging behind? Pradrishyate koyam samajavada. What type of this samajavada? Socialism. Pragatirva kidrashi sa iyam. What type of this progress? One example depicting the conflict between lady in the house and her daughter-in-law. Sundar Raj composed one Shusha Vijaya Natakam. The lady of the house telling his son about her daughter-in-law. Tasyaha pita vijita eva purati dushtaha mata tadurmatiriti prathita prithivyam bhrata vitotha bhagini vyabhicharani iti khyatana vetsi kaluttat kulamarbakatvam. This is a typical dialogue delivery of traditional picture of Sas and Bahu. Now the stranger part of the composition is coming. Father speaks about her married daughter who has been driven out of her house by her in-laws. Father, this is the voice of father, words from the mouth of father. Very strange. Vasanaya vittam datavyam bhushanaya idam bhajana krute mama idam deyam iti swam harati aho duhita. This is the typical mindset. Another allegation from Bhadar. Putri nama mushika janma gehat kinchit kinchit vastu gudam haret kim mushika. Stealing from house of janma gehat. This is very sad, but this is the fact. Now, one Amara Markandeya Natak of Ashu Kavi Shankarlal of Morbi from Gujarat depicts the coexistence of two arch-rival sects of Hinduism. Shaiva and Vaishnavas were hostile in 20th century and even before that. Raka, Araka, Asharat, Apisharat, Chandrika, Achandrika sa, Radha, Aradha, Parashivatava, Asannidhav Sri Pater me. Krishna requests Mahadeva, Shiva, to be present in his Rasa Leela. And he is describing, oh God Shiva, if you will not be here, you will not be present at this Rasa Leela, whole of my game will go in vain. Raka, Araka, Sharat, Asharat, Chandrika, Achandrika, and Radha will be Aradha. Rasollasa prabhavati tada samba shambho yada tvam devya sardam bhavasi shivaya ratna simhasanastha. This is also the beauty and duty of a poet, to depict these things, what he expects, what he thinks that in society this should happen. Historical reference we come across in the composition of great rhetorician Vishwanatha in Sahitya Darpana. Allah vadin rupato na sandhir nacha vigraha. He is speaking that there should not be any tie between this and that. Now, this is the thing where we come to know that in Sanskrit, traditional Sanskrit composition, people have hardly referred to any historical events in detail. Very few compositions have been made on the basis of the historical event. But nowadays, we find after independence, after 1947, more than 350 Mahakavyas have been composed. So we can understand that what type of creative efforts have been carried out by the people. But the quality is in question, of course. But people have tried hard to write in Sanskrit, to compose great lengths of literature in poetry, in Mahakavya, Natakas, of course. But again and again, when we have to think about the content of these compositions. At the end of my lecture, I would like to point to the fact that whenever there is some discussion about the poetry, we will have to also think about these components, these factors, these units which are making poetry and the aim of the poetry as well as the soul of the poetry. Our compositions in modern age are profuse in numbers, but where do they stand? Our assessment of the literary value, our examination of their objectives, where do they stand? In literary criticism, we find that narration of 2-3 chapters on prerequisites of poet. One should be well versed in language, one should be well versed in rhetorics, one should be well versed in this and that and that. All these things are very necessary for a poet to be poet. But after that, what is the psyche? What is the objective behind it? What is the role of the imagination? What is the role of his intent and particularly presentation of his views, his thought, his vision? Poets used to be the people who guided. Poets used to be the people who were role models. Now, here we will have to be very careful in assessing the modern poetry as Sanskrit poetry, because in Sanskrit we have that type of hope and that type of particular expectation that this is Sanskrit poetry and this is something else, though having the garbs of Sanskrit poetry. We are having ample production of Sanskrit writing, creative writing, of course, and still we will have to think that are we having that type of particular apparatus through which we can assess them very correctly. I hope I have given some very select examples for the discussion, and I am very happy that I could speak at length and could put before you some examples of modern creative writing in a definite way so that it can be reflected as some points to be pondered over in future. Madam, I am very heartily thank you all for listening to me.
Yes,
I am
sir.
grateful to you for giving me this opportunity.
Sir, we are really thankful to you. You have taken us through the journey of great variety of the modern Sanskrit literature and modern poets. It was really pleasure to all of us to listen to you. And it has literally opened a treasure to our students work upon in the future.
Thanks, madam. Yeah, I'm really thankful to you for giving this wonderful opportunity to me, because wherever I am invited, I'm invited to speak on the traditional things. Now all these things accumulated in my mind, and I found this opportunity to present before in a nutshell.
And not only that, sir, you have also pointed out that how this literature can be studied. The traditional as well as the modern approach which they have adopted is very important to mark when anyone takes such type of study.
I convey my very best wishes to you all, madam, for arranging this lecture series, wonderful lecture series. I am
Yes,
very
sir.
happy to be part of this thing.
And mainly it was illustrative because students must have gained a lot through it because there were many illustrations. It is not, means we are not aware of variety of such literature, but your illustrations were so apt that we are tend to read those literature genres.
I express my very best wishes to you all, madam, and I'm very happy that for students I could speak about the modern Sanskrit literature in a different way, as far as possible. I could do it, madam. Yeah.
Is there any question upon this? Is there any question from students?
Very rare sessions of modern Sanskrit poetry are being arranged, madam. I congratulate you. Very, very unique opportunity even for me in Mumbai.
Thank you, sir. We are obliged. We
I
are
am very happy.
obliged.
I have spoken on this topic at another places in Gujarat as well as in UP and MP. But in Mumbai, I spoke on modern poetry first time.
So we look forward to more such sessions, sir, in future.
Happy, madam.
So
And we
in
have
yeah.
bulk of literature on this, madam. Okay.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. This is good
I
because
thank,
we have modern Sanskrit literature unit in our syllabus, and students
yes,
have assignments on this
yes.
topic. So they always search for such modern Sanskrit literature. So I think they have got ample options for that, and even those who wants to pursue PhD or some research work in future, they
Yes.
definitely get insight from your lecture.
And I will also share with you whenever I find this type of material with me, so that I can indicate that this thing can be taken as your MPhil or a PhD or research pursuit or some project. Because
Yes,
this
sir.
is very important, madam. The line is continuously flowing in a different way, but it is still there. I very heartily and bottom of my heart, I'm thanking you, madam. Thank you very much.
So with this, I will conclude because it seems that there are no questions. So actually with this lecture, we have come to the end of this lecture series on new dimensions of Sanskrit research. The renowned scholars in the field engage lectures in this series and explore new dimensions of Sanskrit research. First lecture was by Professor Nirmala Kulkarni. She told us about the application of theories of feminism to Sanskrit literature right from the Vedas. And she highlighted that this is the unexplored field of Sanskrit research, but it should be undertaken with unbiased manner. Professor Vijay Pandya rightly explicated on the critique of critical edition of Ramayana and told that critical edition is a specimen for understanding research methodology. So he explored many unknown dimensions of Valmiki Ramayana. Then Dr. Kulkarni talked about lexical tools for Sanskrit research. In her lecture, she illustrated many lexicons with the thought that uses of lexicon is significant in Sanskrit research. Then Hemant Rajopadhyay talked about classicism and modernity of classical Sanskrit text. His approach of study was to set the pathway for researchers in order to read Sanskrit text in critical manner.
Yes.
Then Dr.
फोन कर दोगे?
So it was the concluding lectures given by you. and you have really explored traditional way of research along with many dimensions of modern Sanskrit literature. And it's another area which is very important, which proves that Sanskrit is a living language flowing with variety of contemporary literature. Thus, I hope that our research students have got the avenues, pathways, and methods of Sanskrit research. We hope to organize such lecture series or workshop to explore another new dimensions of Sanskrit research with eminent scholars in the field. And I express my deepest gratitude to all the speakers who accepted our invitation and engaged lectures in this series. We really look forward to all of you for some other engagements in the future. I wholeheartedly thank all the student participants for attending this lecture
Very,
series.
very happy wishes, madam.
Yes.
Very, very happy wishes. This is very, very commendable job, and keep it up. And we have expressed our very, very best wishes for the success of this type of programs, which will really boost the stamina of our young generation to study and go deeper in this layer of our creativity.
Yes. Since this is the last lecture of this series, I would also like to thank all the team members, Dr. Madhavi Narsani, Dr. Suchitra Tajane, and also the office staff who supported me in this venture. I also thank our ad hoc faculties, Ajay Pense, for taking efforts in making flyers and circulating the same. I thank Dr. Sapna Chinurkar, Shobha Sahasrabuddhe also. This
I am thankful.
program would
I
not
also
have been possible without the support of UCC.
I thank my colleague Dr. Hitesh Trivedi for making all arrangements, who has been working with me, Sahityacharya, and a student of Bharati Vidya Bhavan, and has recently completed his PhD in Gaudiya philosophy.
Oh, they were really very nice
I
to
want
know,
to
sir.
express that a lot. Yes.
Yes, so sir, our all your lectures are available on YouTube. So we really thank our UCC department for the same, because all students, those who might have missed lectures due to some problems, they can watch it again and
Yes.
gather the points.
Yes.
And not only that, it will be helpful for all others because they are on the YouTube. So I thank you all, and with this, I declare the end of this program. Thank you, sir, again for accepting our invitation and delivering a beautiful lecture, opening the pathways, new pathways to our students. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. Yes.
एंड केलं तर चालेल का?
हो हो हो.